I was trying to avoid school and I was skipping school, faking like I was sick for a couple weeks. I thought people didn't like me or people want to beat me up.
Wow.
And then my mom was like, okay, what's going on? Then I went and tried this Taekwondo class and it pretty much changed my life.
Welcome to the Ill Noise Business Playbook. We sit down with people building real impact in their communities and unpack the vision behind their work. If you care about real stories and real connection, you're in the right place. Let's make some noise. All right, welcome to the Ill Noise Business Playbook. We are here with Scott from Fit to Defend Academy. Scott, how are you doing today, man?
Doing fantastic. Yourself?
I'm doing good. You know, we're recording this on a Friday. Friday's a good day. Good day to talk about what you are currently really been spending a lot of time devoting your life to kind of get to where you are right now. So if you could share with the audience what exactly made you to go in this way and tell us what you can about Fit to Defend Academy.
Yeah, so we are a professional martial art academy that encompass every range of combat. We offer kids classes all the way up to adult classes. In our training, we do a lot of character developmental training, specifically for our kids, but a lot of the lessons that we're learning on the mat, we can, transfer into real life. So that's kind of the consensus of what we do. You know, a lot of martial arts schools specialize in one specific style of martial arts. Specifically with my kids program, we kind of do like a blended kind of style of martial arts. Yeah.
So I had the opportunity, my wife and I had the opportunity to come see you and come see your academy. And I tapped out a little quicker than I would have liked to start off, but it gave me a great opportunity to just kind of talk to you, by the way. But I did reference to you that I assume I've got a couple years on you, but the movie The Karate Kid meant a lot to me, and it kind of put me in that sort of direction briefly in my life. But where did this stem from you? Like what made you make martial arts such a priority in your life?
Yeah, so I'm about 30 years in martial arts training at this point. I started when I was, my next door neighbor, make a long story short, many years ago when I was a kid, my neighbor across the street, he had like a little Taekwondo facility. I started with him when I was like 4 years old.
Oh, wow.
I did it for a year or so, but then I stepped away, played a lot of sports growing up. I come from a really big family, and in that big family, we kind of have a lot of comparisons, if you will. And for me, it just kind of caused a lot of anxiety, a lot of comparison and things like that. And I have identical twin brother too, right? So, with that, it was always, who's better, who's faster, who's stronger,
Sure.
kind of thing. Anyway, so that kind of transferred into school. And then I just started overthinking things and kind of stressing out about things that weren't really real at the time. Like I thought people didn't like me or people want to beat me up. So it got to the point that I was trying to avoid school and I was skipping school, faking like I was sick for a couple weeks.
Wow.
And then my mom was like, okay, what's going on? And then I was asked to go talk to the school counselor. Miss Corvetti was her name. And after talking with her, she had recommended that I try a Taekwondo class with her and her son.
Nice.
And so my twin brother and I went and tried this Taekwondo class when I was about 12 years old, I think. And it pretty much changed my life. And it just really gave me a lot of personal accountability, if you will. And it taught me about goal setting and a lot about character development. And, the belt system really helped a lot because it was with the goal setting, it showed me, if I work hard, I can get from point A to point B. And then, there's a long-term goal and a short-term goal. And I think that's what I really needed, especially with anxiety, kind of giving you a purpose or a vision or some form of accountability. So that's kind of where it all started back, when I was 12 years old in the system, a martial arts style called Taekwondo, which many of us did because of The Karate Kid. And
yes.
All those other really great movies and TV shows back then.
Absolutely. Wax on, wax off, right? But
yeah, right.
And you have a wide variety of experience. I mean, as you've already spoken about, you're not an expert in a specific set. You've got this global sense of martial arts. Kind of talk about that. What made you decide to just not stick in one frame and to kind of see as many different avenues within the martial arts forms as you could?
Yeah, absolutely. So starting at Taekwondo, Taekwondo is more of like a traditional martial arts from Korea, and it's more of a sport, right? And from that standpoint, I competed a lot throughout the country. And then when I got about 17, I was asked to take over this Taekwondo gym. And I did that from 17 until I was 20. And then it just got to the point that I felt that I needed to learn more. I needed to kind of widen my span of martial arts. And I just didn't feel like I had the integrity to actually tell somebody, hey, you're really able to defend yourself. When at that time I was at my friend's house and a big fight kind of broke out and I was trying to break the fight up. And somehow I got taken on the ground and I felt like a fish out of water, and I'm like, oh, I fought all in the country and, I got all these medals and trophies, but what just happened? I got taken to the ground, and I feel like none of that stuff really mattered, right?
Sure. Sure.
So then I left that Taekwondo gym, and I went and worked for another gym, and they were more of a blended style of martial arts. They would do a little bit more of the Filipino martial arts. They also did a lot of the Muay Thai, which was the kickboxing, and then JKD, which was Bruce Lee's martial arts that he developed. And his concept was absorb what's useful, reject what is useless. And that really
Love that.
really like stuck with me. You know
Sure.
what I mean? So I made a goal to myself that if I was going to teach martial arts for a living, I really wanted to be able to develop my skills in every range of combat. And then a couple years into it, I met a coach, Coach Ben. He got me into Japanese submission wrestling, which is called Shuto, which is wrestling with submissions on the ground.
Okay.
And then I found jujitsu, and that really became my true passion of all the martial arts as far as practicality, right? So over this, 20-year span of trying to navigate getting good at each range of martial arts, I've accumulated about 4 black belts in that span of time of 30 years.
Wow.
So with the goal of, yes, I want to be able to defend myself in every range, but I also want to be able to, as Bruce Lee would say, absorb what's useful, reject what's useless for my students. There's a lot of nonsense that's being taught in the world, and I'll call it a false sense of security. And that's really worrisome to me. We talk about that word integrity a lot. So I feel like people don't really question what they're teaching people. They're going to give somebody a black belt, and they're going to end up getting somebody who's seriously hurt, right? And so that's kind of my vision and my goal here. And I'm constantly still training with my students and trying to get better on my own, but also kind of set an example for my students to keep growing, always be a student. And that's, I think, a really important part just in life in general.
There is no bad student, only bad teacher. I'm sorry, that's a Karate Kid reference. But
I love that.
I will also say, my father, who passed away so many moons ago, but Enter the Dragon was one of his favorite movies. So the fact that he would know that I could talk to somebody like you that holds up Bruce Lee in such a high thing, I think would be pretty cool. How long have you had Fit to Defend? When did it start?
So the actual building, the like brick and mortar buildings,
Yes.
I've had since 2018.
Okay.
But as I had stated earlier, I had been teaching at other martial art gyms, right? So my first gym that I ran was a Taekwondo gym. Then I moved into this blended martial arts. It was like a JKD Kali gym. I ran that for about 10 years. I really helped them develop their kids program. We went from 20 kids to almost 200 kids in their kids program.
Nice.
And then we kind of parted ways. And then I went to another Taekwondo gym. And at the same time, I was helping with a Krav Maga gym. So at that point, when I developed both of increased their revenue and their student base, they both offered me the opportunity to start my own programs inside of their gyms.
Okay.
So at the Taekwondo gym, they were doing the Taekwondo. I started a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu program there. So I was there 3 days a week.
Okay.
And then at the Krav Maga gym, they were doing, I was teaching like CrossFit classes there and a Kali class. And then they offered me to take over and develop a kids program there. So that's where I developed my kids combatives program, which is what I offer here at my academy. So anyways, I was there for about 2 years between the two gyms, developing programs. And then it got to the point that I was outgrowing those spaces. So I kind of consolidated into the halfway point. One of the Krav Maga gym was in Highland Park, and then the Taekwondo gym was in Libertyville, and Lake Bluff, Lake Forest was kind of the middle ground. So that's where we started, right? And that was, I think, in 2018, I think is when we started. And the good thing with that is I didn't start with 0 students, which were a lot of businesses struggle for the first 2 years.
Absolutely.
I think I started with about 70 students between the two gyms, right?
Nice.
So from that standpoint, it was a little easier to get started because I didn't have any investors or anything like that. I call it the Facebook Marketplace gym, right? Because I was going on Facebook Marketplace and finding mats and pads and things that kind of build this place, right?
Sure.
But yeah, so 2018 would be, I would say, my official June of 20th, I think it was 2018, the official opening of Fit to Defend of my own building. Yeah.
Now, how did you, before we continue, how did you learn about us? How did you find this little YouTube channel that we got rolling here?
Yeah. So one of my students, Alex Courtney, right? He had just been starting with us. I think he just started about 2 months ago with us, and he really enjoyed what we're doing. We really, like I said, incorporate the character development in with the martial arts development. And he was telling me about his business and how he's big about wellness and fitness and movement. And then he had said, "Hey, I really love what you're doing." And I I wrote a book as well about fighting for your character. So he got that into that. And then he was like, I think we have a community that we can really work together with. And then that's how he introduced me to you and your wife. And yeah, so in a very small amount of time, maybe 2 or 3 month period, he's made this connection with us.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Again, I
And
love.
he's also a twin, which,
I know.
hey, the universe works.
Yes, he is. He is.
Totally.
How have you been able to kind of get the word out as far as what you're doing with Fit to Defend? How are you able to attract new folks? I mean, obviously, introducing us to Alex Twice as Fit, we talked to him and he told us all these glowing things about you. And then, of course, we wanted to check it out, and we did a little bit. I tapped out quicker than I would have. I still wish I would have stuck a little bit longer, but artificial hip, getting all up there in age was a little challenging. But how are you getting the word out and spreading the word about all the great things you're doing and to bring new folks to the party?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a few avenues. I mean, the number one is word of mouth, of course, like
Absolutely.
referrals. We do like a referral contest or a referral program that offers people incentives if they bring people in and the people sign up. So, and I think that's really important for culture standpoints, right? Like you want a certain culture in your gym. I'm not one to like, obviously money's important, but I would rather have quality over quantity
Mm,
kind of thing.
love it.
So for many, many years, that's all I would do, or I would do like in-house events. Like we would do movie nights for the kids, or like we have a Nerf war coming up in a couple weeks. So we did a lot of like in-house free events. Sometimes we'll charge a little bit of money. We do a lot of belt ceremonies for the kids to invite friends and families to come and support them. Asking people to write reviews on social media like Google and things would probably be our number two. A lot of people go on when they look up businesses, they want to see what your reviews look like, see
Absolutely.
what people's experiences are like.
Yep.
And then, like I said, the events have really helped out a lot. I do a lot of free workshops. There's a lot of schools and colleges. And I was just at AbbVie a couple weeks ago doing workshops for self-defense purposes and just self-awareness topics as well. And then obviously we do paid ad now. I started that about maybe a year and a half ago. The only issue that I find with that is, again, trying to keep that culture strong. Many people, they pay for the advertisement and then they get leads. And then those leads come in, they set appointments. And then you sometimes have to let somebody come in your gym that maybe is not a good fit or your business. I personally am okay with telling somebody, hey, I think that there's a great gym down the road that might be a better fit for you. Just because it doesn't match our culture and, one bad seed can ruin the whole garden, if you will, right?
Yes, for sure.
So I would say that's really what we do, and teaching great classes. I always say, be the cleanest, friendliest gym around and your business will grow.
I love it. And that's such a great point, no matter what industry you're in. I think it's really important for people to know if it's just not a good fit, then to mention them that maybe there might be a better fit for them. It's just going to be, obviously, it's going to be better for you as a business owner, Scott, but it's also going to be better for them as well, for them to kind of find a good fit. So I think that's so very important. What do you,
Especially, I mean, not to cut you, but especially with like the martial art aspect, there's already so much risk in what we're doing, somebody potentially getting injured, and with anything that we do, sitting too long at a desk, we can get injured. But, when we're putting our faith and trust in our training partners, we have to make sure that we can trust those people.
absolutely.
So that's very, very important.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
Agreed. If you could go back to 2018 when you started this, what do you wish you knew then that you know now?
Well, so as I mentioned earlier, I have a black belt in a lot of different martial arts, but I think when you run a business, there's a lot of other things that you're working to get to the level of a black belt in, if we use that as an analogy, right? Like how to market your gym properly, how to, develop staff properly, creating systems that allow this lead generation into appointments, into signups, so that I would say that if I could have learned the system of the back end of things as well as I know how to run a class, I think would have been something that would have been very helpful from the beginning. And just trusting to delegate to people, to the right team members, and trusting people that they can do just as good as you, or they can maybe give you better ideas than you're able to do. And it allows you to open up to be able to focus on the things that you're good at, right? Like I know what my wheelhouse is, and trying to do every single thing that's on my to-do list all by myself is very challenging, because then it's not an A level, it's probably like a C level as far as the quality you're putting out. So yeah.
Yeah, being in the previous iteration of my career, I can tell you that when you have people and you can empower people, you make your life so much easier. And let's be honest, a lot of great ideas come out when people buy in and they feel like they're part of your family. So, I mean, I think it really
Absolutely.
it makes things a lot easier. What sort of challenges have you then found in the last 8 years as far as getting this business up and running and making sure that's as successful as it possibly can be?
Yeah. So, I mean, besides the obvious of like COVID was really challenging, right? Like, especially because we do a lot of touching
I
and
know.
connection and contact, right? So that was,
Were you doing were you doing like visual classes at that time? Were you doing computer classes?
yes. So I was the first one in the actual whole area that started doing like Zoom classes,
Okay.
right? And I was offering that, but I had also been the first person that opened up my gym. I think I was only closed for 8 weeks. And then I was like, guys, if you want to come in and you want to start taking classes, I'm getting tested every single week. I got tested over 96 times. Every single week, I got tested for COVID. Although I'm not supposed to open, right? I'm going to let you guys know that I'm taking all the necessary steps to make sure everybody's safe, right? But I'm really a big believer in people being able to make their own choices, right? So like, I want to give you guys the option to come in and train. We had blocks, squads of people, if you will, and they would train in their little squads of people at a certain time of the day. And then another group would train in their little squad. So we did a lot of different things to try to navigate that time. But what it did do for me is it did teach me how important this was for people, right? And the level of support that I had from my members, you know?
Beautiful.
So yeah, that was a big challenge as far as the business itself. Yeah.
I imagine so. Yeah. At the time, Scott, I had a sales team that was traveling constantly. That COVID was a lot of fun during that time. But how do you're a black belt in so many of these different spheres of martial arts. How many times do you actually have to go to continue to challenge yourself to maintain that same status?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. You know, I made a goal to myself that so over the years of working for people, I learned a lot of things that I didn't want to do, and I learned a lot of cool things that would work for me. One of the things that I learned in the martial art world, especially in the traditional martial arts, is a lot of these guys, instructors or owners, would gain a lot of weight and they wouldn't train anymore. And then they would say, well, you got to call me master and you got to do what I say. And it was this like authority kind of approach, right? And for me, teaching should be based on two different concepts. There should be authority versus influence. And I learned this from one of the mentors, Dave Kovar. And authority is like, hey, do 10 push-ups because I said so. Or influence, hey, let's do 10 push-ups together. And what is the results going to be? The results are going to be way better when you're influencing people rather than making an authority kind of a approach. Now, again, with kids, sometimes you got to be a little bit more firm, but authority doesn't necessarily work. It doesn't inspire the people or empower people the same way as influence does. So what I do, I train with my students on a regular basis. I try to get on my mats with my students at least twice a week. And then I have a coach that I go and I train with as often as I can. It's Friday mornings. I'm trying to get out there. So Friday's my day off. Fridays, they have a 7 a.m. comp training. So all the best grapplers in the Midwest come out and we meet on 7 a.m. on Fridays. And I make it a priority to get up at 5, get up there and get my butt kicked. You know what I mean? And
Sure.
you know what I mean? So sometimes it's just an ego thing that you just got to put yourself, put it off to the side and just be a student. Like I said before, you just got to be a student. So I made that promise to myself. If I'm not training with my students or somebody better than me or getting my students to the next level at least once or twice a week, I'm not going to do this anymore. And I've really, really tried to stick with that. And it's like deep in my soul. Like I will not continue to run my business if I'm not doing that. Now, again, if there's injuries, that's different. But for the most part, I've stuck with that over the last, 30 years. Yeah.
When you were talking about the way in which that you teach, it reminds me of the old adage, what the difference is between a boss and a leader, where a boss says, hey, you need to do this for me. And a leader says, hey, let's do this together. Right.
Yeah,
and I
totally.
think I don't know about you, but I do know about you now that you said it, but I've always responded a lot more to the latter than the former. So I love the fact that that's kind of the way that you're conveying yourself as well.
A while ago, and I've really tried to stick with it. When we're leading, there's different ways to lead people, right? We can lead from the front, we can lead from the back, and we can lead from either sides. And sometimes when you're working with different people need that leadership done differently. Some people need you to be in the front. Hey, follow my lead. Some people need you on the side of them, just supporting them. Hey, man, I got your back. I'm here for you. And then some people need you back from the rear and like, don't delegate. Just let them kind of, as I always tell my coaches, hey guys, this is the mats are like a canvas. I'm going to give you the pens and the markers and the paintbrushes, but I want you to draw on the canvas the way that makes the most sense for you. And I'll give you some of the skills that I've used over the years, but overall it's an expression of yourself. And I think sometimes we, as bosses, we try to micromanage people or we don't lead at all. And I think trying to find a good balance between those two things in leadership role is super important, and something I'm still working on, of course, but I think very important for sure.
Yeah, well, I would imagine if you're part of your team is going to love to hear that sort of stuff, because what you're really talking about is you're pivoting, you're being very adaptive, you're trying to figure out the best scenario possible. You've dealt with so many clients over the years. You've changed so many people's lives. I can tell you with confidence, sports was something that sort of did that for me, where it kind of really gave me that boost to that self-esteem, that really taught me to work with others. It really taught me to achieve common goals and stuff. But I know, in martial arts, obviously those are really stringent terms as well. But can you think right now about a person or two along the way that you've really been able to build up and really kind of, made it sort of quantify that what you're doing is, certainly what you were placed on this earth to be doing right now with your life?
Yeah, absolutely. So owning a business is stressful, right? And there's a lot of doubt that we have in the sense of like, why am I doing this? But then we get those, that intrinsic value that just cannot be met on a monetary level, right? And, there's so many people that I could speak on, but a couple that might come to mind is at an old gym that I used to teach at, we had these triplet boys, the Chartiers were their last names, and they had cerebral palsy, and they were at different levels, each one of them. One, his legs were kind of crooked, so he had like an off step when he would walk. Another one had to have a walker, right? And then the other one is a little bit more functional compared to the other two, but still had his limitations. But anyways, when they came into the gym initially, I was just like, man, I don't know what to do. Like, I want them to feel like normal in the sense of they can take normal kids classes, but of course they had a lot of limitations. Make a long story short, they trained with me for almost 4 years. They went from white belt to black belt, right? Now, so to me, that's that's the power of believing and setting expectations for somebody and making them realize their potential, no matter what limitations we have. And now those kids are grown adults now. They're probably in their mid-20s now. I still run into them occasionally. So that's probably been one of the best stories from, all the years of coaching. I've taught thousands and thousands of people. I've had another student in the past. His name was Declan. He came into the gym, a little bit of a troubled kids. And I remember when we did warm-ups, we would do like these line drills, like the kids would have to run down and back, or they have to do like rolls or different movements. I remember him standing there one time. He's like, I'm not effing doing that. You know what I'm saying? And then, you know what I mean? I'm like, you can't cuss in the class. This is a kid's class, right? But now the kid, got his black belt a few years ago. He just got accepted into college. I think he got a full ride scholarship to college. His parents were like, oh my God, this program changed my kid's life. I don't know where he would have been without it.
That's beautiful.
And we hear that so often. It really is the motivator to keep doing this, even on those really hard days as a small business owner, right? Last week, I had a student that I hadn't seen in probably 10, 15 years, came to me and again, troubled kid, struggled with his mom's relationship. His mom yelled at him a lot or whatever. And he came in and visited me out of the blue and just said, hey, I just want to let you know that you've been a true inspiration for me. I've always looked up to you. And now he's talking about coming back and training with me as an adult. So those are the really cool stories, and motivators.
I'm glad you told us the second two stories, because the first story, I didn't want the audience to think that you only train twins or triplets and whatnot.
Yeah, no.
We have other people. No. Obviously, I'm just kidding.
Of course.
Now, when I came into your location, there was music playing. To be honest, again, to show my age, I liked it, Scott. I got to be honest with you. It's a lot of...
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it was a lot of what Q101 used to be, and I think it's still sort of whatever, but it's that kind of music, a lot of alternative, a lot of cool stuff. But I remember I actually asked you, because I had mentioned, a band that I'm a fan of, that I know you are as well, but I asked you specifically the kind of music you like, or the kind of music that's sort of top of the priority list. And I got to be honest, Scott, you threw me for a loop. Can you tell me where in the world this Motown love came from, Scott?
Oh man, that's Motown is just the jam, man. I feel like it's the best genre of music, but again, that's a little biased, of course. But like I mentioned earlier, I come from a really big family. I never met my real dad before, but the dad that I have my last name from was my older brothers and sisters' biological dad. And my dad, he grew up in Gary, Indiana, which was really close to the Jacksons.
Okay.
They were actually friends, right?
Sure.
So when my dad used to take me and my twin brother down to go visit his parents in Indiana, my dad used to play Motown music going to Indiana. He used to test us as kids, like, hey, who's this? Oh, who's this? And who's this? And he had a big genre of music that he liked, but Motown was really where it was at. So, I mean, I'm a huge Motown fan, and it's funny because I play that music quite often when I'm working with the kids, and now that they're almost adults or going away to college, I'm like, hey, you guys play music. So they're actually playing a lot of the music. The music you heard was actually the coach playing the music, wasn't even my music. That's,
Okay.
you know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah. So between the alternative and all these other genres of music, they're all kind of in the same music that I like from hearing it since they've been kids. But yeah, that's where the Motown comes into play. I still haven't got down to see Motown Records, which will happen very soon, but that's in Detroit, I believe, Detroit,
It is
Michigan.
where Barry Gordy's house is. Yeah. Where
Yeah.
Gordy's house once was. Yeah. Well, to paraphrase, actually to call it from it, just like the Jacksons once said, I think in another season, I want you back. Because I'm picking up what you're saying, Scott. I really appreciate you spending some time with us. I really appreciate you letting everybody know what you guys are doing there. I think there's just so much value in what you're doing. I can tell you, there's so many kids, unfortunately, that bullying is such a problematic thing, and it's been a problematic thing ever since I was a kid too. But I think that you kind of provide a platform for those kids that can kind of put them in better situations to be able to defend themselves, not only physically, but also mentally, to be able to deal with things more appropriately, feel better about themselves, feel more at peace, more at ease. And I think it's really honorable what you're doing. And it's really honorable that this is your passion and you feel so strongly about it. So thank you so much for spending time with us today. We really appreciate it, Scott.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Hope to have you. I hope to see you guys again, which I know I will. I
You
hope
got
to be able to get back onto this podcast with you guys in the near future.
You got it, man. You have yourself a great day, bro.
You too.
Yep.